Welcome to the Reach the Stars podcast, a collection of conversations with cool people who do cool things. Brought to you by Papercraft Miracles. Each week, we'll bring you inspiring stories of persistence, passion, and purpose. With your host, Jonna Willoughby Lore.
Welcome to the Reach the Stars podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Jonna Willoughby Lore, and today my guest is Mellissa Tong. She is a 3-time bestseller on Amazon, Bestselling Author, an award-winning storytelling customer communication master working with people and companies on strengthening their brand story to connect with their audience on an emotional level to drive sales and build brand awareness, and I'm sure many, many other things. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you could be here, fellow Nabo sister.
Yep.
So I wanted to let everybody know that Mellissa and I met each other only virtually, mainly because of the pandemic, at a virtual NABO event. And for those who don't know, NABO is the National Association of Women Business Owners. And so it was really cool for me to connect with one of my NABO sisters who lives on the other side of the country from me. She's all the way in LA. So it's one good thing about COVID is that it has brought people together who wouldn't normally go to meetings and things like that. And it's been really awesome to get to meet all these other amazing people around the globe and share them with y'all. So welcome to the show, Mellissa. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit more about you and where you come from and how you got where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's a very long question.
That's a big question.
I will try. Okay, so I was born and raised in Hong Kong. And when I was there, Hong Kong was still a British colony. I grew up there and came to the States. Okay, let me back up a little bit. Ever since I was a little girl, I always wanted to go abroad to study. So I made my dream come true in 1991. I came to the States with a one-way ticket and 3 large suitcases. I went to school and got my master's degree. And when I finished school, I got a job and I ended up staying. And that was 91. So it's been 30 years? Yeah, wow. 30 years already. It's been a long time.
That's awesome. For anyone who's not watching the video version of this, I just have to tell you that Mellissa doesn't look like she has been doing anything for 30 years because she looks super, super young. So just watch the video if you're not watching it and go watch it because she's beautiful. Anyway, so when you first were studying in school, did you know that you wanted to go into broadcasting and do that kind of stuff? What did you originally?
No, I had no idea. I had no idea. When you were young, you were always asked to write an essay about what you wanted to do, right? So I remember I was 7 years old and the teacher said, this is an assignment, you got to write. And I was scratching my head. I couldn't figure out, what do I want to do, right? I had no idea. So just out of the luck, I said, okay, I want to be a teacher. How boring. But it actually, looking back, I am teaching in a way. It's just not in the traditional sense. But I've always been fascinated with stories. I remember when I was young, I watched all these soap operas on TV because Chinese people, they're into soap operas. So I watched a lot of those. And then when I was older, I remember I was fascinated with movies. And ever since I was a teenager, I always wanted to go to the movies. And when I was in college, I remember I made sure that I had one afternoon free every week. So I could dash over to the other side of town to go see a matinee because it was cheaper, right? And they had all kinds of foreign movies every week. So I remember sitting in the movie theater because it was the middle of the day in the afternoon. So, there were only a few people there and captivated by whatever I was seeing at the moment and walking out the theater feeling so, I was just in such a bliss. I remember every time I walked out of the movie theater, I was still thinking about the story and thinking about, the world the characters live in, right? This different world are very different than, the real world reality. And then there was there was kind of like overbridge walkway. So I would, walk across, and then end up being in a bookstore, I would usually end my afternoon at a bookstore, just kind of browsing and see what kind of new books they have before I head home. And that was kind of like an afternoon to myself. I was just in college. And I really, really enjoyed those days. But I had no idea that I would be ended up doing storytelling. And to give you more background, I was actually a music composition major. So it had nothing to do with film or TV or anything. But after I finished college in Hong Kong, I got my first broadcasting job. I worked at a DJ at a classical music station, radio station. Mm-hmm. So I was doing a lot of live broadcasts, introducing, the next, keys and all of that. So I was familiar with broadcasting. And then when I finished my MFA degree in the US, I was trying to look for a job. And then luckily, because of my bilingual skills, I got my second broadcasting job as a TV news anchor, reporter, and producer. And because I was the newest addition in the newsroom, they decided to give me, they thought, was the least important segment, which was a 5-minute human interest segment every day. They said, okay, we don't care what you cover. Just go find something and do something interesting for the audience. Just don't do anything hard news. I said, okay, great. So every day I had so much freedom. I covered everything from health, beauty, technology, science, red carpet events, movie premieres. I went to Star Trek convention twice, sat on the captain's chair twice. It was a lot of fun doing my little intro. Yeah, so I had so much fun interviewing thousands of people from all walks of life, from everyday people all the way to Hollywood celebrities and famous people. And then after 4 years, I actually covered over 1,200 stories.
That's amazing.
So that was really the best on-the-job training anybody could have ever gotten. In the world of storytelling. But back then, I had no idea. I mean, storytelling wasn't even a hip word back then. I finished that job. I mean, I finished working there at 98. And then I moved over to the fiction side and worked on a CBS show called Martial Law with Arsenio Hall and another very popular Asian actor at the time, Sammo Hung. Now, I'll tell you a funny story here. So Sammo Hung was, he was huge in Asia, when I was growing up. So I remember one time he left a voicemail on my cell phone. And I got to tell you, I try to keep that voicemail for as long as I could. I was literally starstruck, right? The biggest star from Asia left a message on my voicemail. Hey. Anyway, so I was on the show for 2 years. And then when the show got canceled, I started my own production company, Duck Punk Productions, in 2000. And from 2000 to 2015, I was doing a lot of award-winning TV commercial campaigns for Fortune 500 companies, such as Nissan, Verizon, Wells Fargo, Walmart, AT&T, California Department of Health, just to name a few. Won many, many awards, for the work, such as Clio, Eddie, Telly, and a dozen or more, so from different organizations. And then something hit me around 16, 17. I was like, okay, what am I actually doing, right? Yes, I have a production company, but what is it that I'm actually providing, right? Yeah, I shoot videos, but we shoot video sort of in the big format, not like small stuff. But what am I actually really doing? So looking back, at all my previous experiences and my jobs and what I've done so far, I realized that, wow, I actually have been telling story this whole time. Because aside from doing TV commercials, I actually have done quite a few of independent films and documentaries on the side. And yet I have never really called myself a storyteller. Mm-hmm. So it was at that time I decided to, I'm going to rebrand myself, call myself a storyteller, and then also really, got deeper into how I could apply storytelling in the business other than just presenting in the video format. Mm-hmm. And I have to say it was the best decision I made so far, because some of my clients actually have quadrupled their sales in a matter of 3 months. because they're focusing on storytelling and really crafting and honing in on the best way and the best story to use to communicate with the audience on an emotional level. Because people we all know this. We all heard this a million times. People buy based on emotions, right? People don't buy based on facts. But yet, how do you say something, or how do you print something, right? Regardless of the delivery format, how do you communicate something that is simple, memorable, but yet, can create some sort of really, relatable feelings, right? Or emotional feelings behind it, so that people will actually pay attention. Because you see, all I'm doing is helping people shortening the sales cycle. People say it takes seven cycles to do a sales. But if you can shorten it to make it 3 or 4, it's better, right? So all I'm doing is helping people to get to that buying decision sooner. So you don't have to waste so much time. And I'm loving it. Now I'm working with different types of businesses, and I'm teaching storytelling, on a much, broader level. I do a lot of webinars, seminars. And 2 weeks ago, I was just at a PR company, teaching them how to apply storytelling in their way to communicate with the audience, because they do public works. So they have the government as clients, they have, construction company as clients, and yet they are also facing the community, and they kind of liaison between all these different entities. And they said, well, we don't quite know how to really showcase and put, showcase ourselves and put our, best foot forward. I say, no worries, storytelling. So I'm really, loving the work that I do now. And and I feel like I'm finally, making a bigger impact in the way I do storytelling.
That's awesome. I love storytelling. Anyone who knows me outside of the show, in my regular everyday life, I cannot help but tell people stories about things that I've done or things that people that I know have done. And I love that whole experience of taking an experience that I had and then sharing it with somebody else, which is mainly the reason that I started this show in the first place. So it's I've had so many of these great conversations, and I keep trying to remember all the details to tell someone else later. And I was like, I should just have them intentionally and then record them and put them out so everyone can hear both sides and not just whatever I remember to summarize up in my stories. And I have had so many crazy, wild experiences in my life. And I love how storytelling can help people relate, but bring them into your experience. Because when you go through something that's traumatic or something that's difficult, I've talked about this a lot on the show, that trying to relate to other people when you're struggling is really hard. And if you don't have the right medium that helps you be a little bit distanced from what's happening and helps the other person kind of be a little bit distanced from what's happening, then a lot of times it's just super awkward. You're I'm really having a hard time here. And the other people are they're there. I don't really know what to say here. But when you use storytelling and different art forms to convey an experience, it helps people to imagine themselves in it in a way that they don't if you're just telling them what happened. And I just love the way that sharing experiences like that can change people. And I think it's so cool. I love it.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think storytelling is the most effective way to communicate anything, really. I don't think, I've been in this space for a long time, and I have not seen any other ways or forms that are more effective than storytelling. So maybe I'm biased, but I love it.
And it's such a crazy thing to think that the best way to accelerate marketing is, obviously people buy things from companies and people that they know, love, and trust, right? That's what they always say. And you can go ahead and say all day, I have this product, it's really great. But if you can say, I created this product because of this experience I had in my life. And that story sells it to people, and you don't have to sell them anything.
Exactly.
And people want to buy that experience. So whenever they see that product or see, you know, whatever they bought from you, whenever they are interacting with it, it brings them back to the feeling of that experience as opposed to whatever problem the actual product solves. And I find that storytelling is just so integral in what I do in my business too. And we do a lot of storytelling in ways that makes it visual, not through video, but we make things with our hands that help people to tell a story of whatever they want to convey to somebody that they care about. And I think it's just so fun to be able to make stories come alive like that. And
yeah, it is a lot of fun. And I mean, I think people have different ideas about storytelling, and we can get into it a little bit. But when you're able to really share that experience, like you said, right, in a way that, you know, your experience kind of sells itself. So it makes it so much easier. Actually, you don't really have to focus on selling your company or yourself anymore, because like I said, the experience sells itself. And you know, and it kind of takes people out of that, oh, I got to sell this or sell that. It takes people out of that selling mode. And I truly believe that that's old selling mode. It's just not relevant anymore. You know, like back in the days, you know, we had commercials telling us, oh, buy this, buy this, buy this, right? And you know, people say, oh, but if you repeat enough, it'll get into people's psyche, and people, you know, when they look at the product, say, oh, okay, I got to buy this. Yeah, maybe it worked in the old days, but people are so smarter now. People are always looking for products or services that they feel, you know, is leaving an impact in the community, right, in the world. So people are not just looking to buy whatever they need anymore. People are actually searching deeper. I mean, you can find anything online, right? So how do you differentiate yourself than your competitor? It's really the only thing different between you and the person next to you who are also selling the same thing is your story. And each one of us is different, right? And then your story is going to be so different and unique than your competitor. So I'm actually, you know, encouraging everyone to just be brave and share your story, you know, because that's your calling card.
Exactly. And it's tricky because there's so many people out there who are like, well, my story is not that interesting, or like they can't find the confidence in it. Or they don't want to talk about things that they went through that were difficult as part of their story. And they kind of only show the highlights, like, look at all these great things I did, and there's no struggle. And, you know, nobody wants to watch that movie that ain't got no struggle. You know, that's the part that draws people in. They're like, oh, I'm going to root for the underdog, and look at you, you know, like you worked really hard and you overcame this craziness. And that's the story that sells them. It's like, you know, it was really hard and I did it anyway. And people really get inspired by seeing other people do it, because it is hard, and it is, you know, really easy to get derailed from your dreams by all the other people in the world who tell you can't do it and things like that. And so I think anytime people see those success stories, they're like, that's so great. I mean, on a, you know, small scale, that's why so much reality TV and competition shows and stuff like that does so well, because they're like, oh, those are people just like me, and they worked really hard, and here they are, they get to do the thing that they love, and they invest in the stories. And, you know, much as I'm not the biggest reality TV fan, I do like that aspect of it, that it does kind of highlight things about people in their real lives and how they interviewed the people for the shows and stuff like that. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I really think that everyone has something to teach, and everyone has something to learn, you know, from each other. I mean, we're all here for a reason, right? So every day is a journey, and the more we can learn from each other, the better.
Exactly. And it's the one thing that really draws me in most about being involved with NABO is there's so many other networking groups, not necessarily women's networking, business networking groups, but business networking groups in general. There are a lot of them. And I just find that the atmosphere in NABO is so collaborative and there may be other people who are in the same field as you, but it's not like a competition to see who can get the most business cards or who can get the most leads at the meeting. It's not like that. And it's just, you go to the meetings and people are like, tell me about you and how did you get here and what's your story and how can I help you and how can we work together? And I just love being in that type of community, and I'm super glad that it brought us together. Yay.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I don't like environment that is very competitive because, I truly believe that, we're more powerful than we think, and there's no limits. Yeah. So when you're in that competitive environment, it kind of, makes you feel like, there's nothing to compete against each other. So, like I said, everyone has their own unique story. So the reason why you do what you do, although you do the same thing, is going to be very different than the person next to you. So in a way, there's really no competition. Your audience will decide who they gravitate toward most, right? And then they're just going to buy, from that person anyway. So there's nothing, there's no competition. That's kind of how I look at it. So
it's funny. That reminds me, the college that I went to is this little teeny tiny school, and there were a bunch of weirdos. I'm not even going to lie. It was just like a whole school of weirdos like me. It was great. But their slogan, I don't think they still use the same slogan, but at the time their slogan was, we're not for everyone, but then again, maybe you're not everyone. I was like, that's me. What?
Yeah, I like that.
There's enough clients in the world for everybody.
But more than enough for everybody. Yeah.
Right. There's more than enough business out there. There's so many people who need different products and different services for different purposes. And, I think the most valuable thing you can do as a business owner is to recognize right away if you're interacting with someone who is not meant to be your client, and that's fine. I talk to people and I have a deposit you have to pay in order to have a consultation with us because it takes so much of our time. And if I'm meeting with somebody, I can't meet with somebody else. And there's definitely people, not a whole lot of them, but there's been people who are like, what, I have to pay to even talk to you? I'm like, yep, sorry. Yeah, you do. And if they're complaining about paying, $25 or $50 to meet with me, then I'm like, not my client. Sorry. Like, you can go shop on Vistaprint. That's where you want to go. And that's cool. Power to you.
Yeah, like I said, everyone, there's just so much out there, really. I feel like whatever you need, there will be that somebody or that place who can serve your need, right? Mm-hmm. So you just have to find, the right medium for both the client and the customer to work together.
Exactly. I've been working with this business coach, Terry Maxwell. She's awesome. And she says that if your differentiation is right, then you don't have any competition because you're the only one that does what you do. And I just love that, it's not pushing other people out of your competition field and, elbowing your way through them all. It's just like highlighting the things that only you can do. And people just only see that, and say, "Oh, that's the problem I have, or that's the solution I need." It's right there. Mm-hmm. And as long as you can figure out the best way to highlight that, then you're gonna to the moon, right?
Yeah, that's the power of brand story.
Absolutely. I love it. Yeah. I love it. I'm always adding things to my brand stories and changing them up and figuring out ways to kind of tell the story of the things that we make and the people who hire us to make them and how we help them connect and reach out to people that they want to be closer to and figuring out how to say things that are really hard to say. And we do a lot of memorial gifts and things like that. And it's really cool to kind of help other people too, to tell that story, which I think that's the special part for me is helping people to say like, okay, well, I need something to connect with this person in this situation, but I don't know what to say. And I'm not crafty. I don't know what to do. And I say, oh, tell me about that person and your relationship. And I take all these notes and then I figure out, say, okay, well, for instance, for when we do wedding invitations and stuff like that, I had some clients who had their first date at a pizza place and we made invitations for them that had basil in the invitations in the paper. And they're like, check it out. It's made from us. This invitation tells the story of where we came from. And it gives them that little kind of launching point to bring up that story and tell people about how they got together and stuff like that. And I just think it's so sweet to be able to tie things in like that.
Yeah, I love it. So it seems like we're both doing storytelling, but in very, very different ways. I love it.
It's so cool. I love it. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about your story of getting crazy stage fright, we shall say.
Yes.
Seemingly out of nowhere, and how that happened and how you got over that and have continued your
Yeah, I'm happy to share that story. I actually, shared it only a few times. So I was the first time I was on stage, I was 4 years old. And when you're at that age, you basically had no idea, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously I wasn't scared. And the reason why I was on stage, because I was in kindergarten and they were trying to handpick a kid who could recite, they have a whole speech they want this person to deliver to the class who's graduating from kindergarten. Mm-hmm. Well, I remember memorizing it. And then every kid in class had to, basically audition, for this role. And so for some reason I got picked. And I still remember that moment very vividly in my head right now, actually. So I was standing there on stage, I'm always on the shorter side. So I'm this like tiny little kid, right? 4 years old, standing in front of the microphone. And they had a spotlight on me. So I couldn't see any faces. It was pitch black. All I could see was dust particles floating in the air. That's all I could see. And I did it. I don't think I made any mistakes. And then in the end, I heard people clapping. And then my mom was waiting backstage. I walked back and then that was it. So that was my first experience on stage. And I had, like I said, I had no fear. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think about this incident, until way later. So fast forward, I was doing, live broadcast shows, right? And then later on, I was doing live broadcasts as a TV news anchor. So I had no problem being on camera. But because I was married to a person who's kind of a wordsmith, mm-hmm. and I gave him the power to correct me. So I told him, this was early on in our marriage, I told him because I came from a foreign country, so I always wanted my English to be perfect. So I told him, okay, if you hear a mistake here and there, feel free to correct me. I want to be perfect, right? So that perfectionism. So over time, he was correcting me, and I thought I was trying to be better. But I didn't realize that when you do it with such repetition, day after day after day, time after time after time, up to a point that I realized every time I had to go in for a pitch meeting or something, I just couldn't do it without having memorized the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I just couldn't talk normally. I became 2,000% self-conscious. Forget about 100%. So I became so self-conscious. I was so critical of myself. And I didn't want to make a single mistake. So I had to memorize everything the night before so that when I go in the next day, I could just basically say it out loud. I remember at the time I had to pitch a lot of movie ideas and TV ideas at movie studios. And I would memorize easily 6 pages of stuff, like a big pitch. And when I went in, I pitched it, although I was quite nervous, but they said, oh my God, it's such a good pitch. But they didn't realize it was actually, I memorized it. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't very, it was free flow, but it wasn't it wasn't as organic as I would have liked, right?
Yeah.
But that was the best way I knew how to do it at the time. And then I had to do, clients' presentations and everything. And if the room had more than 4 people, then I would really have to pay attention to memorize what I had to say the next day. Up to a point, I felt completely paralyzed. I was like, wow, I don't know what happened to me. I mean, I just felt so paralyzed. I mean, like I couldn't say anything. And I remember watching other people speaking on stage and looking at them with such, admiration, thinking, wow, I want to be like that. I want to be able to walk around and just speak freely and not having to worry about what is the next word that has to come out of my mouth from my memory, right? From memorizing it. But at the time, I still, I had no idea how to do it. So, and then I got into a personal development program. And then I realized that, wow, I needed to find a way to change it. And that's when I went back to my whole history and I look at myself and I remember that moment when I was 4 years old. And I say, wow, see, I was fearless before. So how did I get here? Then I realized it was because I gave my power away and then I told someone to correct me. So I said, okay, I want no more correction. So I stopped that. And then really in a matter of, I think, months, I was able to speak freely with no fear on stage. I did a test in 2017 and I delivered a seminar. And I don't remember feeling any stage fright or any fear at all. And then from that point, I mean, I've done probably, dozens, if not hundreds since then. So now I'm the person who can walk freely on stage and who can say whatever. And I've never memorized even one sentence. So that's kind of my story.
That's awesome. It reminds me of like when I was first on stage too. I was also a kid. I was in a play a couple times and when I was in grade school, but the first time was just me on the stage. My mom brought me to an open mic to read my poems when I was about 12. And I remember being so super nervous about going to do it. I was so dorky. I had only a couple of friends at school and got bullied and teased a lot. And because I was super weird, still super weird, but it was just like not cool then. And now it's cool to be weird. I guess, or there's just enough weirdos out in the world that we can unite and not be totally ostracized by all the normies. And I just remember being so afraid of what the people would think. And I ended up saying to my mom, like, I'm so nervous to go out there. And she just said, the only difference between nervousness and excitement is fear. And she's like, there's nothing to be afraid of when you go up in front of people. It's nothing. What is the worst thing that's going to happen? The very worst thing is that you poop your pants, maybe. That's probably be pretty terrible. But are you going to die? No, you're not going to. The worst thing if you're reading a poem is probably that you'll flub up some of the words and you have to read it over again. Who cares? Like, that doesn't matter.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you had a great mom. I mean, I don't think my mom has done very much stage work herself, so she didn't really give me any pointers. And plus, I don't think I actually told her about my struggle. But the learning of the story is we don't know that, we are the ones who actually, give our powers away. And then it's so easy to condition a human being, really, right? I mean, we just didn't know. And I didn't know by giving my power away and by wanting to be better, right? By asking somebody to correct me would in turn strip away my own confidence bit by bit, right? And then to the point where it completely paralyzed me. You see, I didn't know that, so I was allowing the condition to condition myself without knowing. But so I'm, like I said, teaching a story is, if you want to change something in your life, you can go back and look at your experience and then see when you actually start giving that power away and then make a decision, to take that power back. Because like I said, once I made my decision to, okay, I don't care what it takes, but I'm going to get back to when I was 4 years old, because that's who I was. I don't know what I became over here, but I was determined to get back to where I was. And then I did it in such a short period of time. So I just want to encourage, everyone that you can really do it. Nothing is impossible. You can do it. So, but the thing is to recognize it and have the awareness and also the determination and the decision to change it.
Mm-hmm. It's so wild that out of all the fears in the entire world, fear of public speaking is like right up there. It's like fear of public speaking and then like snakes, and I try to tell anybody who's like, oh, I can't go up in front of people and say this or do this. And I just am like, just go do it. Just rip it off like a Band-Aid. And the more you do it, I mean, for me, after that first poetry reading, I read the first poem. I was so terrified that my paper was like this whole time. But I did it anyway. And I got to the end of that first poem and all of the people started clapping. And some people are really uncomfortable with being the center of attention. I am not one of those people. So for me, like having a whole room full of people clapping for me totally sold it. That was like, yes, that was scary. Yes, it was crazy. But all the way I feel right now of all those people sending me their good energy from that, there's nothing better on earth for me than to get that from an audience and like give them some of me and to have them give it back. And so I think for anyone out there who's terrified of public speaking, I think that the best advice I can give y'all is to just do it. Start small and just go do it. It's crazy now that I think if I was in front of maybe 3 to 5 people, I would feel more nervous than I would in front of like 5,000 people. It's weird.
Why do you think you'll feel nervous in front of a small group though? I mean,
I think it's just because you can't help but see everyone at the same time. You know what I mean? Like if there's 5,000 people, you're never going to be like able to, with your eyes connect to all the people that are there. Uh-huh. But if there's only a couple people there, then you're kind of like, okay, well, everyone is definitely watching me. And if they're not watching you, you can tell right away, you know? Right. So I think it's that. I think it's more that.
Okay.
But it's just funny that I'm more comfortable and like on a huge stage with a ton of people with my face in a jumbotron or something like that than I would be like at a little coffee shop or something.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I mean, for me, there's really no difference, it doesn't matter whether I'm in front of 3 people or whether I'm in front of 3,000 people. It's really the same for me. Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily that I'm nervous when there's fewer people, but I'm just more aware.
Right.
More aware of the audience,
right?
As individuals. That I am as like, oh, it's the audience as a whole. They're out there. And it's kind of, if you're up on a stage and there's only like 5 people in the audience, then you kind of feel like a jerk because it's probably a big room. There's like 5 people in it. But I think it's more kind of if you're in a small space where you're not like on a stage. I mean, you're on like a platform or a stage area, but you're not really all that far away from the people and things like that. I think it's more of that. But I'm super excited to get back to being on the stage now that things are getting, knock on wood, slightly better.
Me too. I personally love the in-person connection much more. And there's just something you can get from a live audience than presenting virtually, right? I've done a bunch of these virtual seminars, but it's not the same for me. It's really not the same. I mean, I love being in front of people because I like to see the aha light bulb going on moment, on their faces, right? And I can't get that, virtually.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I guess if you were doing a Zoom and you had it on the gallery view and you could see all the people.
Yeah, but still, to me, it's not the same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not the same. And, if you have it on the gallery view and everyone's clapping, you still only hear one person clapping at a time, which is super awkward. Yeah. But yeah, it's been a long 15 months. We'll say that for sure. My husband and I play in a band together, and we haven't been able to play. We played one show outdoor last summer for a very select audience, only like 5 or 6 people, and we videotaped it so we could put it out. But other than that, that's the only time that we played. So it's been a long time coming. We actually have band practice tonight, getting everybody back together. So get the band back together, right? That's what they say.
Wow, I wish I lived closer. I would totally come.
Well, we'll try and put it out there so at least you can see it virtually. So before we run out of time, I wanted to do the segment that I do at the end of all the shows. I ask all the guests the same 5 questions. So it's 5-question time, because I think it's really interesting to hear how different people answer the same questions in different ways. So the first one is, tell me about an experience that shaped who you are today.
It's definitely my decision to go on my personal development journey. I wouldn't be who I am today if I did not go down the path, for sure.
So on your personal development journey, did you work with coaches, or did you?
Yeah, I signed up. I signed up for a 1-year personal development program, and it was pretty intensive. And there's another story to why I signed up. I don't think we have time to go through that, but it was kind of like divine intervention. That's how I call it. Mm-hmm. Because before that time, I had no idea what personal development was whatsoever. I didn't know what it was. I just knew nothing about it, and I have no friends who went through it. So I could ask questions, right? So I had no idea. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even Google the coach before I went in. It was crazy. Anyway, yeah. So I would say that was definitely that for sure. That was a very life defining, experience for me.
That's awesome. I love coaching. I wish I had all the money in the world so I could be like, all the coaches. Tell me what I should be doing right this minute, because I have crazy ADHD and I'm super distractible all the time. And I'm like, working with other people to kind of get outside of my own head is really, really valuable for me in so many ways. It's like therapy and gym class at the same time or something, if that makes sense. Okay, so number 2, when you feel defeated or overcome, what do you tell yourself to keep going?
If I feel defeated, I would remind myself how far I've come. Yeah, because we all have so many successes, in big or small ways, right? And sometimes we forget. So when I feel like, I could use a pat on my back, then I try to remind myself, hey, look at how far you've become. Look at all the awards that you won on your wall. Look at all the achievements. Look at all the people that you've worked with, all the clients that you've worked with, all the sales increases you have, help your clients, enjoyed. Yeah. So, and then usually I bounce back up pretty quickly. Depending on how serious it is, usually I'm back the next day. Mm-hmm. If I need to take a day, then it's okay.
Yeah. Usually if I'm like feeling really crappy, I go read my Google reviews. I'm like, oh, look at all these nice clients I had. Yay. Okay. We're better now. All right. Number 3, tell me about a way that you overcame a failure or a mistake and what you learned from it.
Let's see. Wait, so a mistake or failure, right? Okay. So at the early stages when I had my production company, I was doing, like I said, a lot of TV commercials, and I copied what the other production companies did, which was they had 3 sales reps to help them expand and grow the business. So they had the East Coast, Midwest, and West Coast sales reps. So I thought if I do the same, I would enjoy results just like that. So I spent 5 years hiring 3 sales reps. And none of them brought me a single job. So it was 0 results. So, so don't be as stubborn as me. If it doesn't work, abandon your plan sooner.
Like, give it a fair shake to see if it's really going to work. But like,
right, I was
don't
really
just keep going hard.
like,
you don't want to.
Hey, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. It's gonna work. Go. Yeah.
That's a good one. Okay, number 4. What one trait or habit is most responsible for keeping you on track?
I would say resilience, because I mean, if I have to count all the hurdles I hadn't still have to jump through, it'll probably fill up, I don't know how many journals.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so if you truly believe in what you do, and you truly believe in your own purpose in the world, then you can face any defeat. I truly believe that. So at the end of the day, just get really clear on why you do what you do, and what is the true value that you bring. Like I said earlier, right? It took me years to figure out, what my value is, right? I didn't realize it was storytelling. So if you get super crystal clear about what is the one thing that you truly bring to the world, then I think you can face anything.
For sure. I love that question, because it's the answers that people come up with are so different. I mean, some people are like, oh, what keeps me on track? I, exercise every morning. And then other people are like, they don't see it. They don't take that question as something that they physically do, but something that is a trait that they have that helps them to do that. And I just love how different people think about it. It's so interesting. Yeah. All right. Number 5, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten? And what advice would you give to other people?
Wow. What is the best advice that I ever got? I think the best advice I ever got was don't give up. I mean, I know it's kind of cliche, everyone says that, but I actually think that is the best advice, right? Because when you need to hear it, then you need to hear it, right? I mean, we all have moments where we feel like, crap, I don't know if I could do this, right? And yes, you can, don't give up. The best advice I want to give is, it truly look within yourself and work on your self-love and self-worth. Because if you have both, then you're really undefeatable.
For sure.
Yeah, you're really undefeatable.
I love that. So great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is my last question. So usually at the end of the show, I have everybody say where other people can find you online. So if you want to give a shout out for your websites and things like that, and your
Sure. My company has a very strange, awkward, tongue-tied kind of a name. So hopefully you remember that. It's duckpunk, duckpunk.net. So my info is on there. So feel free to check it out. And again, tell your story.
That's awesome. Yay. Well, thank you so much for being with us on the Reach the Stars podcast. I have been your host, Shauna Willoughby Lohr, my guest, Mellissa Tong. She's the owner of Duck Punk Productions. So cool. I love the name. And go check out her website, hire her to do some storytelling, branding and stuff with you if you need that type of thing. And if you love this show, give us a review on iTunes and give us a little thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. But the most important thing that you can do is just tell somebody else about the show, because that's the best way. As we know, storytelling, personal experience works the best. So tell somebody else that you love this show, and hopefully they'll check it out too. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
A single interaction has the power to change your life forever. This is a place for the stories of those moments. Stories of pursuing dreams, overcoming tragedy and failure, of coming back to life after so much of what feels like dying, of continuing on with only a vision as a map. This is the place where those moments live on. Come sit by the fire, look up at the stars, and be forever changed too.
Thank you for being with us on the Reach the Stars podcast. Our theme music is generously provided by Byrocratic. You can find him on bandcamp.com. Thank you to all of our current patrons, guests, and everyone else who helps make this dream a reality. We are so proud to be building this amazing community with all of you. If you love this podcast, please consider sharing with a friend, leaving a review on iTunes, and becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/reachthestars. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to see the videos of these conversations. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, do something cool and tell us about it.